Here are a few questions that I want you folks to really think about and answer honestly. Why does the same Indian who keeps a perfectly clean home throw a wrapper out of a car window without thinking twice? Why does a person who would never cut a queue at an airport while getting a coffee at Starbucks think nothing of doing it at a petrol pump? Why do we build world-class metro system, then spit on railway platforms? Now, I'm not questioning your morality. This is actually an economic question because this behavior that I just described costs India hundreds of thousands of crore rupees every year. And the reasons behind it are more rational and fixable than most people think. Folks, today, let's talk about civic sense. Hello folks, I'm Shashank and you're tuned into FinShots TV. We're part of 01 Media. This video is part of Make India Better, a series dedicated to finding what's holding India back and asking what it would actually take to fix it. Okay, so a lot of creators have already made hundreds of videos about India's civic sense problem, calling it out, listing examples and asking why we are like this. We're going to do something slightly different today. We're going to follow the economics instead. Because once you understand what poor civic behavior actually caused this country, and more importantly, why rational people keep choosing it, the conversation changes completely. Let's start with the reframe, because it's the most important thing in this video. Alright? Stay with me. The standard narrative about civic sense in India goes something like this.
Indians are undisciplined. They don't follow rules. And they don't have respect for public spaces.
It's framed as a character issue, a cultural issue, something inside us. And that framing, while very convenient, misses something fundamental about how human behavior actually works. People don't behave civilly because they're good people. They behave civilly because the systems around them make it rational to do so. And when those systems are broken or absent, even perfectly decent people start making what look like uncivil choices because those choices are, in their context, entirely logical. Now, here's a simple example. You're driving down a lane you know is technically a one-way, but it's 8 p.m. and you're late, and you see a small gap. One guy cuts through the wrong way and saves 4 minutes. You watch him go, nothing happens, so the next evening you do it too. By the end of the week, 6 bikes and probably 2 autos are routinely going the wrong way down that lane, and the guy who still waits at the proper turn feels like a complete idiot. Nobody in that chain started out wanting to break the rules. They each just responded rationally to what they observed, which was that the rule carried no consequences and ignoring it carried a clear reward. Now, this is what behavioral economists call the broken windows effect. One visible violation left uncorrected signals to everyone watching that enforcement is absent, which invites more violations, which signals even more strongly that nobody's watching, and just like that, the norm collapses. Okay, now let's look at what this costs. World Bank, an organization for economic cooperation and development studies, shows civic improvements can boost a country's GDP by 3 to 5%. Folks, India could save 6 to 8 lakh crore rupees annually in inefficiencies. Now, this 6 to 8 lakh crore rupees is a number so large it stops meaning anything. So, let me show you what it actually looks like at a street level. It starts with something as stupid as a wrapper. Someone throws a wrapper on the street instead of walking 10 steps to a bin. No one bats an eye because it's one stupid wrapper. But now there is a wrapper on the street. The next person sees the wrapper and thinks, oh, it's anyways dirty here, and throws their cup. By evening, that corner has a small pile. The municipality sends a cleaning crew the next morning. That crew costs money like salary, vehicle, fuel, and that's all paid for by your taxes. The pile is cleared. By the next evening, it's back again. The cleaning crew comes again and again and again. The municipality is now spending its entire sanitation budget on reactive cleaning, picking up yesterday's mess instead of building the processing infrastructure that would reduce the mess in the first place. Meanwhile, some of that waste finds its way into the drain clogs, the next time it rains heavily, the street floods, shops close a day of business, commuters are stuck for hours, a child walks through the water, gets sick, the family spends 2,000 rupees at a clinic, the parent misses a day of work. Multiply that one wrapper, that one corner, across 1.5 lakh tons of municipal solid waste generated every single day across India, and what looks like a littering problem starts looking like a very expensive economic loop that nobody can individually see that they're contributing to, but everyone collectively pays for. Then there's the reputational cost. India ranked 176 out of 180 countries in Yale's Environmental Performance Index in 2024, pulled down significantly by sanitation and waste management scores. Now that ranking shows up in conversations with foreign investors, in travel decisions made by international tourists, in the perception of Indian cities as places to do businesses. Now, talking of tourism, India's tourism sector contributes roughly 13 lakh crore rupees to GDP and supports over 3 crore jobs. But as of last year, because of how unruly we are, foreign tourist arrivals were still below 2019 levels, while our neighbors Vietnam, Thailand and China have long surpassed their pre-pandemic numbers. The former CEO of Jet Airways said publicly that India's dirty and pothole cities are a direct reason. In the age of Instagram and YouTube Reels, the first image of a potential visitor sees of India is often a congested and a littered street, and that image travels. A French expat living in Gurugram put it plainly: most of her foreign friends simply no longer want to visit. Now that's a civic infrastructure problem with a direct revenue cost. And then there are the smaller everyday costs that don't make it to any index. The meeting that starts 25 minutes late because half the attendees operate on Indian Standard Time, the resigned cultural shorthand for lateness that we've somehow turned into a personality trait. The footpath that started with one pile of construction debris, which becomes an invitation for the next person to add their rubble, which is now permanently impossible for anyone in a wheelchair or with a pram. Folks, each of these individually is a minor inconvenience, aggregated across 1.5 billion people and tens of thousands of cities and towns. They are a systematic drag on how this country functions. Now, the most instructive data point we have on whether any of this can be fixed is Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Remember, launched in 2014? It became the largest sanitation campaign in human history. Between 2014 and 19, India built over 10 crore toilets. The WHO estimates it prevented roughly 3 lakh deaths and saved 14 million disability-adjusted life years in that 5-year window alone. Now, those are extraordinary numbers. The infrastructure intervention genuinely worked, and yet multiple studies found that even after all those toilets were built, a significant portion of rural India continued defecating in the open, not because the toilets weren't there, they were, but because decades of habit, social norm, and the absence of genuine enforcement meant that behavior didn't follow infrastructure. And by the way, we're going to do a complete dedicated video on what happened to Swachh Bharat and what actually changed and what didn't, and what the data says about where that money went. But for now, the core lesson is this: you cannot solve a behavior problem by only building things. The system has to make the new behavior rational and not just available. Now contrast that with what happened in Indore. Indore has ranked as India's cleanest city for 7 consecutive years. And the reason it works is because the city made civic compliance the path of least resistance. Yes, you heard that right. Door-to-door waste collection is consistent, so there's no reason to dump on the street. Spot fines are actually issued and collected through e-challan systems, so littering has a visible immediate cost. This is something that even Bangalore is doing right now. The city put infrastructure and enforcement together, not just one of them. The result is a city that looks and functions differently from most of India, not because its residents are different people, we're all Indians, but because the system gives them different incentives. The global version of this is Singapore, which gets cited so often. I know it's become a cliche at this point, but the mechanism is worth understanding clearly. Singapore didn't become clean because Singaporeans are uniquely disciplined. It became because the cost of civic violation was made genuinely painful and genuinely certain. A first-time littering fine in Singapore ranges from $300 to $7,000. Now that's not a warning, that's not a challan that sits unpaid for 3 years, a fine that you actually have to pay. Now, elevators have urine detection devices that trigger an alarm and lock the doors. Public toilets are randomly inspected and not flushing is a finable offense. I'm not even kidding. Now, this sounds extreme and Singapore's model has raised debates around it. Questions of autonomy over policing, what it costs in other freedoms, but the mechanism is quite clear. When the consequences of civil violation are certain, visible and proportionate, behavior does change. Not because people suddenly become better, because the calculus changes. The caste dimension of this is also worth naming briefly because it's historically real and economically consequential. For generations in India, cleaning of streets, of waste, of public spaces was forcibly assigned to specific communities at the bottom of the caste hierarchy. The work was stigmatized. The people doing it were stigmatized, and one of the legacies of that system is a widely internalized belief that maintaining public cleanliness is someone else's job. That belief persists across classes and education levels, and you see it in people who keep their homes immaculate and throw wrappers out of the car windows without a second thought. Private space is mine to maintain, public space is not mine, it belongs to whoever gets paid to clean it. That's the mentality. Now, breaking that belief is not just a matter of awareness, it requires redesigning both infrastructure and consequence so that the alternate behavior becomes normal. So, where does this leave us? India's civic sense problem is real, it's expensive, and it's not going away on its own. But the honest analysis is that it's not primarily a culture problem or a character problem. It's an incentives problem, an enforcement problem, and in parts a legacy of institutions problem. The cities and countries that have genuinely improved civic behavior didn't do it by making people feel bad about themselves. They did it by making the right behavior easy and the wrong behavior costly. Indore did it, Singapore did it, Rwanda did it with its community cleaning program. Now, what India needs is political will and institutional follow-through, which is, as we keep discovering in the series, the hardest thing to manufacture in Indian governance. Anyway, folks, that's it for today. Let me know in the comments where you're from and what does civic sense look like from where you live. I want to hear the ground reality from across the country, and I'll see you in the next one.